What's up, everybody? We are on day 2 of the Diddy deliberations, but we're not going to be talking about just that today. We're going to be talking about Diddy and what's going on, because I think that we have some pretty major updates into how the jury is kind of thinking, and we're going to talk about that. I think that this gives a lot of insight into what they're honing in on and what they're focusing. But the other things that we're going to talk about, as you can see from this photo, is I want to talk about BRYAN KOHBERGER in the Idaho 4, because that plea deal, I don't know about y'all, but for me, came out of absolutely nowhere, and I want to talk about that. I'm so with that one, I don't even have notes prepared for that. We're just going to talk about it. And then I want to give you guys an update on the firefighters from Idaho, that ambush they were into, where 2 had passed away. 1 is, recovering. And I want to talk about that and give you guys the latest updates on that as well. So we're going to do that all probably pretty quickly, because this isn't a full trial day, right? So there might be a couple more updates that come out regarding Diddy, which is who we're going to start with at the top of the show. But those can come out in shorts or in reels or, TikTok videos, whatever. So that being said, for my TikTok crew, please tap that screen, get it to 10,000. We're close. And for everybody, no matter what platform you're watching on, please hit that follow button. And if you want to see TikTok, any images, you got to jump over to YouTube, but there's not a ton today. So, that being said, let's just get into it. So I'm going to start with what happened yesterday, because I think that there's some really important things that happened yesterday during the Diddy trial that will bring us into where things are at today regarding the deliberations. So remember, this is now day 2 of the deliberations. As I'm making this show, as this video, whatever you want to call it, they've been deliberating for probably about 11 or so hours. That's kind of where they're at. They stopped at 5 o'clock yesterday, and then they continued on this morning, and they can go on as late as they want or as early as they want, make their own kind of schedule with this. But on Monday, yesterday, Judge Sumeranian began delivering the final jury instructions in the case of Sean Diddy Combs. These are pre-scripted instructions, and they were expected to take over an hour to read in full. And each juror on the main panel will retain a physical copy of the complex instructions to use during deliberations. Now, let's start with the racketeering charges. Okay, that's really confusing, right, for a lot of people. He began walking the jury through the 8 alleged predicate acts listed under racketeering conspiracy, which appears as count 1 of the indictment. In order to convict Combs of racketeering conspiracy, the jury must find that he entered into an agreement with at least one other person in the alleged enterprise to commit 2 or more qualifying crimes within a 10-year span, meaning that in the 10 years, he's had to have done 2 things off this list, and there had to have been another person that's involved with it, right? That he entered into an agreement with. Now, those acts that underpin the racketeering conspiracy include kidnapping, arson, bribery, forced labor, transportation to engage in prostitution, sex trafficking, witness tampering, possession with intent to distribute controlled substances. Prosecutors allege that Combs and his co-conspirators engaged in this pattern of racketeering from at least 2004 to 2024. Then for counts 2 and 4, that was the sex trafficking instructions. That is count 2 on the indictment, and that charges Combs with trafficking Cassie Ventura by force, threats of force, fraud, or coercion over the period of approximately 2009 to 2018. Count 4 makes very similar allegations involving Jane. If you guys remember Jane, she testified, as under a pseudonym, and that spanned from 2021 to 2024. Next, he read the jury instructions for the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Count 3 accuses Combs of transporting Cassie and various commercial workers across state lines between 2009 and 2018. Count 5 alleges that he did the same with Jane and other commercial workers from 2021 to 2024. From there, he officially excused all 5 of the alternate jurors, informing them they are no longer required to attend court during deliberations. However, he made it clear that they must remain reachable in the event that they are needed to replace a main panel juror. The judge thanked the alternates for their service and said his deputy would provide them with his personal contact information should they need anything, even offering a tour of the courthouse as a token of appreciation. It's the very least I can do for your immense service in this case, is what the judge told them. Finally, the judge told the jury that they are permitted to choose how long they wish to deliberate each day. If they decide to continue past the usual 5 p.m. cutoff, they're allowed to do so. This flexibility could become very important as the jury begins weighing the more weighty and complex charges against Sean Combs. So, basically, with all of that, those are the instructions for them to go and start the deliberations, right? This is what he was doing yesterday. And from there, after more than an hour of jury instructions, the jurors were officially sent out to begin deliberations. They headed into the jury room to start weighing in the 5 felony counts in the indictment, right? Including, again, the racketeering, trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution. The jury panel, let's talk about who the jury is, and we'll go through this very quickly because I think that y'all need to know this as well. The jury panel is made up of 8 men and 4 women. This is just a reminder. They range in age from 30 to 74. They are the ones that are currently deliberating the legal fate of Sean Combs, right? And here's what we know about him. These are the main panel, the 12 main panel jurors, right? Juror number 2 is a 69-year-old man who works as a massage therapist in Manhattan. He has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting from NYU. Juror 5 is a 31-year-old man who works as an investment analyst. His hobbies include golf, tennis, and video games, and he described himself as an active churchgoer. Juror 25 is a 51-year-old man who works as a scientist. And by the way, we're gonna put a little, like, let's star Juror 25 because we're gonna talk about him in a moment. That's the one who there's a little bit of trouble with him yesterday. But Juror 25 is a 51-year-old man who works as a scientist and lives in Manhattan with his domestic partner. Juror 28 is a 30-year-old woman who lives in the Bronx with her mother and brother. She works as a deli clerk at a grocery store. Juror 55 is a 42-year-old woman who lives in Manhattan with her fiance. She works at a nursing home and says she is not a fan of news. Juror 75 is a 68-year-old man who is retired and previously worked in finance. He lives in Westchester County with his wife, and he said that he listens to old Indian music and likes to play cricket and volleyball. Juror 116 is a 68-year-old man who lives in Westchester County with his wife and kids. He's a retired lineman. 160 is a 43-year-old woman who is a physician's assistant and works with elderly patients. She lives in Westchester County with her husband and kids. Juror 184 is a 39-year-old man who lives in the Bronx with his brother. He's a social work program supervisor and part-time security guard who has a master's degree in social work. Then the last two, Juror 201 is a 67-year-old man who has 2 adult children and works as a logistics analyst. He lives alone in Westchester County. Juror 217 is a 74-year-old woman who works as a treatment coordinator and has a bachelor's degree in sociology. She lives alone in Manhattan, does not have children. Then lastly, Juror 230 is a 57-year-old man who works as a manufacturing architect, has a master's degree in mechanical engineering. He lives with his wife and kids in Westchester County. Now, real quick on him, I got to make 2 comments on him. First is he's the one who replaced the other juror, the black juror who they said had issues with the way he communicated where he lived. So this is the replacement juror. And when I made a video yesterday, just a real quick correction, I was talking about Juror 25 and I kind of just got mixed up. And this particular juror, I said that Juror 25 was the replaced one. That's not true. It's this one right here. So I just want to make that correction. Now, so that's all of them. That's who's handling his fate. So take that information with, however you want to. Now, after the jury departs the courtroom, the judge then turned to the attorneys on both sides of the courtroom and delivered praise for what he called an exceptionally tried case, which I would agree with that. He thanked both the prosecution and the defense for their professionalism and cooperation throughout the proceedings, saying that the case was really exceptionally tried by both sides. He went on to note his appreciation for how the teams handled the high-profile nature of the trial and gave special recognition to the inclusion of younger attorneys in substantive roles. There we go. According to the judge, their participation was not lost on him and stood out as a meaningful aspect of the proceedings. So, from here, the jury had to choose a 4-person, which they did. So, not long after deliberations, they sent the first note to court. It was brief and procedural, saying, "We have elected juror number 5 as our 4-person." Now, to give you guys, again, a quick reminder of who juror number 5 is, he is the 31-year-old man who works as an investment analyst, right? The one who says that his hobbies are golf, tennis, video games, and he's an active churchgoer. That is who their foreman is, okay? And from there, at that happened, once that was done, both legal teams were allowed to leave the courtroom. Shortly after, though, we're only like an hour into the deliberations at this point. This is yesterday, when another more serious note followed. The courtroom staff handed it first to the prosecution, then to the defense attorney, Mark Agnafilo. And then because of that, Sean Combs had to re-enter the courtroom and was seen reading the note himself. One which filled about 1/3 of a line sheet of paper. Everyone had to return to their seat, and here's what it was about. The note from the jury was revealed a very significant concern. It stated, quote, "We have a juror, number 25, who we are concerned cannot follow your honor's instructions." The message was signed by the newly selected foreperson, which again, juror number 5, and included a request either that the judge speak directly with the jury or note that juror number 25 be interviewed separately. Now, when this came out yesterday, this was raising very serious concerns and questions about the jury's ability to deliberate effectively so early on in the process. The judge remained on the bench during this, reviewing the request and discussing next steps with both the prosecution and the defense. He had not yet issued a ruling, or he took some time to issue the ruling, I should say. Sorry, because I started these notes yesterday. Because I was going to do a show yesterday, and then it got away from me. Eventually, though, the judge did decide to send a written reply back to the jury, which adopting the language that was proposed by the prosecution, which the defense had also largely agreed on, meaning that he let the prosecution and defense determine what was going to be said and how they were going to respond to this note. And the message stated this: "I received your note. I remind every juror of their duty to deliberate and their obligation to follow my instruction on the law. With that instruction in mind, please continue deliberating." The judge also warned the jury not to disclose any specifics about their deliberations in future notes, emphasizing the importance of confidentiality and proper procedure during the stage of the trial. Now, I want to real quick talk about this wild card juror, because a lot of people, when I made this yesterday, were talking about the fact like, well, maybe this is a compromised juror. Maybe this juror's been paid off. Maybe, Diddy got to one of them. That's one of the things that we've been hearing. And I don't think that that's the case. Okay. So let me talk about my opinion on this wild card juror. Okay. Because again, they had barely started deliberating. Then the note comes in, right? And it raises a lot of eyebrows from everybody involved. They're less than an hour and a half into deliberations. And what comes in is he can't follow instructions. And yes, on the surface, y'all, that sounds bad. But let me break down what I think, my personal opinion, is going on here, because I don't think that it means that the jury is compromised, or this juror is. The juror number 25, he is a 51-year-old scientist. I don't know if any of y'all have ever worked with scientists or engineers, people in research or data-driven fields. Because if you have, these folks are methodical, thorough, incredibly particular. Their entire job is about logic, evidence, and following procedures to the letter. So if this guy is raising concerns, it might not be that he's ignoring the judge's instructions. It could just mean that he's hung up on a specific detail and he's not ready to move past it yet, or he needs additional clarification. People like that need to see everything. They don't just go along with consensus because everyone else in the room thinks it's time to wrap things up. And honestly, it's not a flaw. It's literally part of how they think. And if I was Sean Diddy Combs, I would want somebody like this on my jury, right? So I don't read this as a juror going rogue. I read it as someone who takes this responsibility very, very seriously, maybe even to a fault. Could it slow things down? Yeah, absolutely. Could it frustrate the other jurors? 100%. But again, I would rather have somebody in that room who's looking at every piece of evidence than someone who just wants to be done and over with. Now, the judge ended up reminding all of them again about their duty to deliberate and to follow the law, and told them to keep going. But this is definitely a dynamic that we're going to keep an eye on. It's worth watching, because not because I think that this jury isn't really a wild card, or because I do think he is, because I don't, but because I think he might be the only one holding the line on something others might be glossing over. So to me, it doesn't scream like we're going to have a mistrial. It screams, I need to be absolutely sure. All right. So then let's get into today. So today, this morning, the judge returns to the bench to address a question submitted by the jury late yesterday. The inquiry related specifically to the language used in the indictment concerning the distribution of controlled substances. And here I'm going to tell you this, as we get into what's going on today, I think that today is very, very important, which is why I decided to make this whole show together. I mean, we got the other topics we're going to talk about, but in particular with this comments and the notes coming back from the jury, the things that they're requesting and what they're looking for, this to me gives us a ton of insight into where the jury is honing their focus at this moment in time. Okay. This is very, very, very important. So basically, the language used that they wanted more information or clarification on concerned the distribution of controlled substance as one of the alleged underlying acts, right, tied to this racketeering conspiracy charge. The jurors have requested clarification on what exactly constitutes quote unquote distribution. And this is in the context of controlled substances. Rather than offer new language or reinterpret the charge, Judge Subramanian said that he would respond by pointing them back to the written jury instructions that they already have. And then he announced that he would send a note saying, quote, in response to the jury's question, The court refers the jury to page 37, lines 1 through 3 of its jury charge. And then he quoted those lines, which read, "The word distribution means actual, constructive, or attempted transfer. To distribute simply means to deliver, to pass over, or to hand over something to another person, or to cause it to be delivered, passed on, or handed over to another. Distribution does not require a sale. Does not require a sale." Now, that's very important because you know that one of the main things that they talked about at the end was that, yeah, he used substances for pleasure. He gave them to other people who used them for pleasure, but he wasn't distributing them. This can come back to bite him because what we've heard in testimony is that he would have people get them for these free costs and then distribute them to people, give them to people to take. So this makes it a lot easier for them to be able to convict him on that charge, right? So that's the first thing. Now, notably, in regard to this, the judge rejected alternate language proposed by both legal teams. Prosecutors had recommended a simple one-word response, which was yes, which the judge found insufficient. The defense had pushed for a broader redirection to the full set of instructions or additional sections of the charge. The judge declined both approaches and opted to quote the exact passage as written. And this was the jury's first question since the beginning of deliberations, and it highlights how carefully they're parsing the complex legal language, especially regarding the alleged substance-related conduct tied to the racketeering conspiracy count. That's very, very big. Okay. Now, real quick, because when this happens, the legal team has to come back into the courtroom. Like Diddy's there, they have to bring him back because if they reach a verdict, everybody's got to be there to come right in, right? So real quick to kind of let you know how that vibe is going. The court session in the morning was very brief because the jury just went to continue their deliberations behind closed doors. The judge took the bench long enough basically to take care of that one question before adjourning the legal teams for the day. And then when prosecutors and defense, or as defense attorneys and prosecutors exited the courtroom, Diddy lingered for a moment. He turned toward the gallery and stopped to speak quietly with his mother, who's been present through much of the trial. Combs leaned over to his mom and gently whispered, "Just relax, it's going to be all right." He told her he was heading back to his cell, offering a quiet moment of reassurance before walking away. He complimented her appearance, telling her he loved her outfit, a green and cream zebra print ensemble. It was a brief but intimate exchange, a moment of calm amid the gravity of a high-stakes federal trial, which now rests in the hands of 12 jurors behind closed doors. Then later in the day, Combs had to re-enter the courtroom as everyone awaited further developments from the jury. His mother, his sister were also present. Sitting beside his mother was Dana Tran, the mother of Combs' youngest child, who was once again in attendance. The courtroom remained still as eyes turned toward the bench, waiting for news of the jury's next communication. So then at around 10:15, the jury sends another note to the judge. And this, guys, this really tells you where they're at, in my opinion. Okay. They sent another note to the judge, and the message was received. Attorneys for both the defense and prosecution quickly re-entered the courtroom. The judge took the bench, and the contents of the jury's request were made public. Prosecutor Maureen Comey informed the court that the jury was seeking transcript excerpts from two key witnesses, Cassie Ventura and Daniel Phillip. The note asked for 4 specific portions of testimony tied to pivotal alleged incidences. In this case, I cannot talk. 4 specific portions of testimony tied to pivotal alleged instances in this case, which signals to me which events might now be weighing most heavily on the jurors' deliberation, in their deliberations, what they're doing. And let me tell you what they specifically requested, okay? They specifically requested Cassie Ventura's testimony about the Intercontinental Hotel incident. That's the one where he was caught on camera beating her. Her testimony regarding the events in Cannes and what happened immediately afterwards. So if you remember that was the film festival, she had to wear glasses, had to use her hair to cover up black eye, was all bruised up. Then Cassie's testimony, if any, about interactions or so-called freak-offs, which involved Daniel Phillip. Daniel Phillip's testimony about the Essex Hotel incident, which involved Cassie. So this request makes clear that what jurors are trying to do here is they're trying to cross-reference Cassie and Daniel's accounts regarding some of the most graphic and disturbing allegations of abuse and trafficking that have been presented during this trial. It also indicates that they might be narrowing their focus to incidences involving physical abuse, coercion, and cooperation between witnesses, particularly those tied to Cassie's years-long relationship with Combs. This is huge, guys, because it's what they're focusing on. As of late morning, both legal teams were working to identify and compile the relevant portions of testimony that responded directly to the jury's request. Once the excerpts are finalized and agreed upon, those sections will be provided to the jury for review inside the deliberation room. Again, this marks a significant moment in the trial and possibly a turning point, as the jury's focus appears to have sharpened around certain core events and witnesses' accounts central to the prosecution's case. Now, just to real quick do a very slight revisit here, because I know we all know Cassie's, but let me just give you all a real quick revisit on Daniel Phillips. And this was from, trial days 1 and 2, going way back. He was one of the earliest witnesses. Sorry, somebody's here, and my dogs are going crazy. Daniel Phillip was one of the earliest witnesses to take the stand, a male review manager. He testified that he was paid between $700 and $6,000 to sleep with Cassie on multiple occasions. According to his testimony, these encounters were not romantic or consensual in the traditional sense, but rather arranged and paid for, sometimes with Combs present, sometimes with him involved. He then testified that during one encounter, Ventura instructed him to urinate on her while Combs watched. He said Combs recorded their activity using both a phone and a camcorder. In their first encounter, around 2012, Phillip recalled arriving at a NYC hotel expecting to perform at a bachelorette party, only to find Cassie Ventura and a masked man whose voice he recognized as Combs. He said Ventura handed him money to sleep with her. One of the most haunting parts of Phillip's testimony involved an alleged incident where he witnessed Combs verbally and physically abuse Cassie. He described Combs shouting at her, then dragging her by the hair into a bedroom. Phillip said that he had heard slapping sounds and Ventura screaming repeatedly, saying, "I'm sorry." And he testified that he didn't report what he saw out of fear. He said, "I was completely shocked and messed up in my head. There was nothing I could do." That's what he told the court. As she was afraid, I could see that she was afraid. So, because of this, the lawyers from both sides have gone back and forth over which sections of Ventura's testimony should be included in the transcript delivery. There was particular disagreement over what filled the jury's request related to the Intercontinental Hotel incident. The judge ruled that the jury would receive the requested excerpts no later than 1 p.m., which is now 3:30 there. He also ruled that the jury would be given not only Ventura's testimony about the days surrounding the Intercontinental incident, but also her testimony concerning the Instagram post she made after the Intercontinental surveillance video was released, a point that drew objection from the prosecution. Prosecutor Emily Johnson stated that the jury could be sent the other 3 requested transcript excerpts immediately, while the defense and prosecution continued identifying exact passages for the Intercontinental portion. So at this point, that's where we are for this, guys. It's clear that, well, here's what I'm going to tell you on this, though. With multiple notes already submitted at specific, in specific requests that they've had for testimony transcripts, it's very clear that the jury is taking a methodical and detailed, focused approach as they're assessing these serious charges that are against Sean Combs, which again include trafficking, transportation for prostitution, and racketeering conspiracy spanning 2 decades. And before we move on to the next topic, I will say, as you guys know, I'm covering this from start to finish. We are on verdict watch. We are on deliberation watch. We are on day 2. I don't know when we're going to have one. People keep asking, when are we going to have one? I don't know. That's not up to me. I'm not in that courtroom. I'm not in that deliberation room to be able to tell you that. We'll get it when we get it. But as soon as we do, you can bet that I'll be on here. And you can bet that as we have updates, I'll be, of course, coming back to let you guys know. Now, that being said, before we get into the Kohberger stuff, if you don't follow already, please consider hitting that follow button. It is a free thing that you can do to help support my platforms, whether you're watching on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Please consider doing that. And on YouTube, subscribe is the same. So let's get into Kohberger. I don't have prepared notes for this, guys. I don't have prepared notes for this because this came out of left field, and I can talk about this one without notes because it's not as complex. So here's what happened. Yesterday, we all got the news that BRYAN Kohlberger took a plea deal, right? What happened was the defense, despite what I know there's a lot of stuff out there, the defense approached prosecution saying, we want you to offer us a deal. We want you to offer us a deal. But in that deal, we want you to take the death penalty off the table. And so the prosecution came up with a deal. 4 life sentences. One for each of the victims. One for Cassie, Xana, Ethan, and Maddie. And then 10 years, the maximum charge for burglary. Meaning he'll never get out. He would forego all rights or the ability to appeal. He would never be able to appeal. He would never have the possibility for parole. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars. And apparently this is what he agreed to. as opposed to a trial. Now, here's where, you know, I've gone to sleep and I was angry about this, right? This is not my case, right? But I've been following it, I've been covering it, I've invested in it like you are. And what we have to remember is that this is about the families, and I'm going to talk about that in a second because we know how some of the families feel. This is about the families, right? This is about the victims. For the last almost 3 years, this guy has drugged these families through a lengthy investigation process, trying to build a trial for him at the 11th hour to go ahead and say, no, I'm taking a plea deal. I'm going to do this. And this tells me a couple things, you know, and I compared this yesterday with Diddy. Some people are like, well, does that mean he's guilty? And the answer, of course, is yes, he's pleading guilty. But here's what I'll say to that. Okay, despite the fact that he is vehemently denied any involvement, he was stargazing, he was doing this, he was doing that. He's now accepting a plea deal where he will never get out of prison again. If you were innocent, you would go to trial. If you were innocent, you would go to trial. He's not. And that proves it. Okay? Because you're going to fight. And here's a good example. I don't think that Diddy is innocent. That's my personal opinion, right? I don't think that he is innocent. However, he thinks he's innocent. Okay? Diddy thinks that he is innocent, which is why he rejected a plea deal that allegedly, supposedly, was for about 15 years. That's the rumor. Unconfirmed. He rejected because in his mind, he thinks he's innocent, and he thinks that by going to trial, he will beat the charges against him. Okay? His lawyers didn't approach prosecution with a plea deal. They approached him, and he rejected it. This guy's attorneys approached prosecution saying, we want a plea deal. All right? That's what happened. Somebody said that they're lost. They don't know what this man did. Let's talk about what this man did. This man is responsible for the deaths of the Idaho Four. This is Kaylee Goncalves, and we're talking about her family first. The Idaho Four, they were 4 college students who were knifed to death in a matter of minutes. He came in and stabbed 4 of them. Maddie Mogan, Ethan Chapin, Xander Knodel, and Kaylee Goncalves. Okay? That's what he did. Now, the death penalty has been on the table for Idaho. Idaho has lethal injection and firing squad as their options. That has been the biggest thing that they have been fighting, is getting the death penalty off the table. That and Taylor, the defense attorney, has been trying to delay this as long as they possibly could. Now, tomorrow, Wednesday, is when this will be signed off on, okay, by the judge. People keep asking, could the judge deny it? And the answer is yes, the judge could deny it. Will that happen? Highly doubtful. Highly doubtful. If the prosecution and the defense agrees, the judge is very likely going to agree. And I'm going to say something that I don't agree with, okay? But it's just the fact of the matter. We're going to be pragmatic here. This case is not the Goncalves, Mogan, Chapin, Knodel families versus BRYAN KOHBERGER. It is the state of Idaho versus BRYAN KOHBERGER. The state of Idaho. So while they can take the family's concerns and opinions under advisement, under consideration, they have no obligation to fulfill those concerns or even worry about them. So prosecution has decided that they are going to take this deal. There will be no trial. For prosecution, this is a win. A plea deal is still a win for them in their win rate. They want that. They want that win rate. There's no lengthy trial. Now, prosecution said that they're trying to protect the families from, having to go through a long trial to see group pictures of their loved ones. And that's what's going on with that. They also said that they did talk to the families about this, but we learned that that's not true. That they brought the family in to have a discussion about something, but the family never realized that this is what it was about. And they found out when they received a letter that this was going to happen, that BRYAN KOHBERGER was taking a plea deal. Okay. Now let's start with Stephen Goncalves. Okay. Now here's the thing about Stephen Goncalves. You don't have to like Stephen Goncalves. He's very loud, very boisterous, and I don't blame him one bit. All right. He has become the official or unofficial spokesperson for the group. He's got a lot of opinions, and being a father to a daughter, which I am, I don't blame him one bit for how he feels. He's angry. He has no problem saying it. He feels like this is not justice. He feels that the families weren't considered. Steve Goncalves wants to see BRYAN KOHBERGER dead. He wants to see him pay for what he did to his little girl. And I can't blame him for that, and I don't blame him for that. And remember, he's not here to appease everybody or to appeal to everybody. He's here to give his daughter a voice because she no longer has one. He is here to fight for her and fight for what he believes to be is the justice for this. He is not happy with this decision. After almost 3 years of this being drug out, he's not happy with this. It's not the outcome that he wanted. He wanted to go to court. All right. He wanted to go to court. Right. So then let's talk about the next one. We're talking about Ethan and Xana, starting with the Xana. Xana's family, too, does not agree with this decision. They wanted to go to court. They've already seen a lot of the pictures. Xana Kanoto's aunt specifically said, them saying that they're trying to basically protect us from it is BS. That's not true. We want to go to court. We weren't consulted with this. We want him to have the death penalty. That's what they're saying. So that's two families. Now, Ethan's family has also spoken out today. They support this decision. They support the plea deal. They support this being over, and they plan to attend court tomorrow when it's signed. From the very beginning of this, they've never been very keen on the death penalty. That's just how it is. Now, as far as Maddie's family, we don't know. We don't know. They've not said anything yet. I do suspect that we'll probably hear something from her family soon, but we don't know what that is yet. So here's what we need to remember. BRYAN Kohlberger, for those of you guys who've been following true crime for a while, somebody said I haven't confirmed it, but somebody's saying that Maddie's dad posted that he wanted the death penalty. So if that's true, then that's 3 of the families wanting it and 1 of them not. So if Maddie's family is doing that, then so now we know their opinions. Okay, so I had somebody confirming it on Instagram and on YouTube. So here's the thing, though. BRYAN Kohlberger, he's going to prison for the rest of his life. Do I think he should face the death penalty, personally speaking? The answer is yes, I do. He's going to be there for the rest of his life. He brutally took the lives of 4 people for what? For what? Maddie's dad said he's good with this decision. Apparently, he said he just wants it over. Okay, I'll try to do an update on that and see. I've seen both sides, so I'll take a look. So y'all take that, look it up, for what it's worth, but that's what we're seeing. Okay, a couple people saying that Maddie's dad was good with the decision. So he'll go to prison for the rest of his life. Why? He would sit on death row for probably 20 years. There would be appeals and things like that, I'm sure. But ultimately, he would exhaust those, and he would be on death row forever. People have also asked, do I think that life will be taken in prison? And the answer to that is no. There's a hierarchy when it comes to criminals, right? Murderers are typically at one of the top rungs of this ladder. Especially when it's not people who murdered children. Now, while they were young adults, and I, being a 43-year-old man, look at them as being children because, they're college students, they're kids. They're adults. He didn't murder or abuse or assault children. In fact, in this case, he didn't essay anybody, right? He just murdered them. That's what he did. What he did. And so, from a prison standpoint, he'll actually probably be respected. In that hierarchy of criminals. That's just the reality of it. So he'll be fine. He'll be fine. But here's the last thing I want to say about this before we kind of move on from this and talk about the other Idaho case. Yes, it would probably take a couple decades before BRYAN Kohlberger was actually put to death. At the end of the day, we know that Brian's family has not come and visited him in Idaho, not once, in about the 2.5, almost 3 years. They speak to him on the phone, but that's it. They've never come. They never come to visit him, which means they probably won't visit him a lot. But should they decide that they want to get on a plane and fly to Idaho and visit him and give him a hug, they could do that. If they want to pick up the phone and talk to him on the phone, they could do that. You know who won't be able to do that? The families of Maddie, Xana, Ethan, and Kaylee. They're never going to be able to do that again. And I think that that's part of the reason why some of them are very adamant about this being death penalty, right? But the bottom line, he continues his life. Exactly. Bottom line, he continues his life. He continues to live on. He will be forgotten about. He will be obscure. And I hope that when this happens, that we remember the victims more than him, because that's who's important here, right? And as I think the sister, was it Kaylee's sister or Xana's sister? I can't remember. Somebody's sister said it yesterday. It might have been Kaylee's. That these are not just the Idaho Four. These were 4 individuals who had hopes and dreams and lives and friends and families and dreams ahead of them that were snatched away by some monster in the middle of the night, some monster they didn't even know. So let's just remember the victims of that. Now, I know that this is going to seem whatever, but when it comes to mass shooters, which this is what this guy tried to be, right? I know the name of the person who is responsible. We're talking about the Idaho firefighter ambush real quick, okay? And for those of y'all who follow me know that when it comes to mass shootings, and I consider this, even though it didn't technically meet the definition, he tried to make it meet the definition of a mass shooting. I won't show their pictures or mention their name. I will refer to them as the shooter, because too often we romanticize the idea of mass shooters. We give them all this infamy, and it continues to go on. And so on my platform, it's something that I choose not to do. And I hope that other creators, take lead from that and choose not to show their pictures and things like that. But they do. So in this, I'm going to show, and if you're watching this anywhere but TikTok, you can see the pictures I'm showing. These are the firefighters that were slain. Okay, we are the firefighters. That are slain. So those of you who don't know what we're talking about, let me just give you a real brief overview. Nightmare began just after lunch on Sunday, June 30th at 1:21 p.m. Firefighters were dispatched to a reported brush fire on the east side of Canfield Mountain, which is just outside of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It is a peaceful mountain community of just about 57,000 residents, very small. Nothing about the call seemed unusual. These firefighters have answered 1,000 calls just like it. But it wasn't a brush fire. It was a trap, an ambush. By 2 p.m., shots rang out. The scene descended into chaos. Firefighters, unarmed first responders, unprotected first responders were forced to abandon their trucks and run for cover. They had walked straight into an ambush. Distress calls came over the radio as firefighters scrambled to safety. One voice, panicked and breathless, pleaded over the communications, saying, "Everybody shot up here, send law enforcement now." Another firefighter was calm but shaken, said that but everyone was thinking, "It's clear to me that this fire was intentionally set to draw us in." Right? And that has been confirmed, that the fire was not random. It was premeditated. It was set on purpose. And it's like, look, I don't condone violence on any of our first responders or anybody for the most part at all. Like, I understand people being mad at the police. I get that. That makes sense to me. Why is anybody mad at firefighters? Like, out of all the first responders, no offense to my law enforcement out here, but firefighters and paramedics, those are the favorite ones. I think firefighters are amazing, right? Like, everybody, like, nobody looks at firefighters and is angry with them. People are, unless your house is on fire, you're excited to see them. You like the truck is cool. It's just they are the perfect example of first responders that their sole purpose is only to help you. That is it. That is it. So Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris didn't mince words when he addressed the media. He said this was a total ambush. These firefighters didn't have a chance. In the hours that followed, more than 300 officers from local, state, and federal agencies swarmed the area. 2 helicopters, which were equipped with snipers, circled overhead. Roads were shut down. SWAT teams were deployed. This was an active shooter situation in a very rugged, mountainous terrain, and no one knew if the gunman was still out there watching. And initially, guys, people thought that there were multiple, but what they've determined is that it was single, and he was just running back and forth. By 3:15 p.m., investigators had zeroed in on the suspect's location using data from his cell phone, and by 7:40 p.m., it was over. The body of the 20-year-old shooter, because again, I'm not going to say his name, was found in the brush alongside a firearm. Authorities believe that he died. And now, we didn't know this yesterday, but we know now, believe that he died from a self-inflicted wound. Then they found a flint, which was likely used to ignite the brush fire, was recovered nearby. They also recovered a shotgun, rifled slugs, and additional shell fragments at the scene, which raises concerns that more weapons might still be hidden in the area. Meanwhile, the fire raged because it was unchecked. While police worked to neutralize the threat, flames consumed by the hillside. By the time firefighters could safely return, 26 acres had burned. But the greater damage had already been done. 3 men were shot, 2 were dead, and an entire community has been left shaken by a senseless, strategic act of violence, one that turned a routine response into a fatal ambush. Now, we know the names of the brave firefighters ambushed and gunned down on Canfield Mountain, right? I want to tell you guys a little bit more about the men behind these uniforms, the lives that they led, the families that they leave behind, and the legacy that they built throughout the service. So the younger one, which is the person who's on the right in the photo, that's Frank Harwood. He is a 17-year-old veteran of apparently Kootenai County. I was saying it wrong. Jody, thank you for the correction. Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. He had built his life rooted in commitment to his crew, to his country, and most of all to his family. He was a former Army National Guard combat engineer, a father of 2, and a husband. His chief described him as a leader who did an amazing job, someone deeply respected within the department. This is not just a man who answered the call. This is someone who lived his life in service to others. The chief, Christopher Way, said it best, this loss is felt by so many. The other person on the left, that's John Morrison. He's 52 years old. He wore the badge for more than 28 years. He climbed the ranks at the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department, rising from firefighter to battalion chief. He was a leader in title and in action. His fire chief called him one of the hardest workers you will ever meet. But what sticks out most is what his colleague, Gabe Eckert, shared during a press conference, which was they had been smoking cigars during a rare lull at the station. Not talking shop, just strategizing calls, but talking about life. And we talked about being better fathers. We talked about being better leaders. We talked about being better firefighters. That was the last time Eckert saw him, and that's the memory that he gets to keep. The third firefighter, Dave Tisdale, who I don't have a picture of, survived, but barely. He's 47. He is an engineer with the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department and has been with them for 23 years. He has undergone 2 surgeries after the ambush. He's currently surrounded by family and is able to open his eyes as of today. And the family released a statement thanking the public for their support and confirmed that both surgeries have gone well. Now, so these 3 men were targeted. 2 are gone. 1 is fighting. And again, an entire community is left trying to process how and why this happened. Again, these weren't firefighters. They were husbands, fathers, friends, mentors. And they were ambushed just while doing their jobs, trying to save lives, not knowing somebody was lying in wait to take theirs. So let's talk about a little bit about the shooter, okay? What we've learned about him. We learned that he's been living, again, I'm not going to say his name. You can look it up if you want. They learned that he'd been living out of his van in northern Idaho and had only minor run-ins with police, mostly trespassing incidents, but nothing violent or felonious. On paper, he was pretty much invisible, yet once you start looking behind the scenes, you do start to see some disturbing clues that begin to emerge. Some former classmates from North Phoenix Preparatory described him as a loner, academically behind, socially detached. He made rude remarks towards teachers and scarcely participated in cross-country, never clicking with the main group. Another remembered a journal filled with hate symbols and weapon sketches and unsettling, profanity-laced text to a student. He would be fine and nice 1 minute, and he would be crazy the next. Yet he could be charming in short bursts. He was verbally aggressive. You had to take him in doses. That's somebody who played video games and airsoft with him had said. His former roommate in Sandpoint said that in the final weeks of their 6 months together, he kind of went downhill. He moved out in January, and by June, he was living in a van. Just before the attack, the shooter posted a now deleted Instagram story showing him in camouflage and face paint with a belt of a shotgun shells and Bjork's Hunter playing in the playing lyrics like "I'm going hunting" echoing in the background. Authorities say they recovered the flint he used, of course, to set the fire. Investigators also recovered screenshots from a TikTok account believed to be his containing disturbing claims. Some videos suggested he sold organs on the black market, and his bio read, "My tick is to make fear," Both his Instagram and TikTok accounts were deleted after the shooting. According to court documents from 2015, the shooter's mother filed a domestic violence protective order against his father, accusing him of violent threats with a sniper rifle, property destruction, and burning down their home. His childhood included extreme conflict, with his father initially barred from seeing him. His grandfather, whose name is Dale, said the shooter had aspired to be a firefighter. The very people that he took out, he aspired to be one of them. And he loved firefighters. By the way, he was working as a tree trimming service, by the way, since he moved to Idaho in 23. But apparently he loved firefighters. It didn't make sense that he was shooting firefighters, saying maybe he got rejected or something. Something must have snapped. And I want to say this. My wife and I were having this discussion, and that was one of the first things she said. The only reason he would target firefighters is maybe they rejected him. Maybe he was rejected from being able to be a firefighter. He couldn't have it. Nobody can. Kind of an attitude. And I don't know if that's the case. We don't know the motive yet. Right? But definitely, that's what the grandfather said, and it's definitely something that we've talked about. But all that said, remember, he's only lived in Arizona for a couple, and he moved from Arizona. He's only been in Idaho for a couple of years, but at least in Idaho, the sheriff has confirmed that there's no record of any fire department application or interest form. So again, this is a man who allegedly idolizes first responders who trained among trees and camouflage. He's now accused of luring them to their deaths. Now, there's no manifesto, no political affiliation that we've seen, or declared ideology that has been found. Whatever. We don't know what the shooter believed in or felt. That remains locked in deleted posts and unspoken trauma. But we do know that he ambushed those who he admired. His stepfather said that we don't understand why this happened or how this came about. Our hearts and spirits are broken for the lost and the hurting. His family has pledged that they will fully cooperate with whatever they need. So here's what we definitely know and what we're still trying to figure out. Okay, we know that there are social media posts that show camouflage shells in the Bjork song Hunter, which equals kind of premeditation. TikTok claims organ sale post, fear-based bio, deleted afterwards. A dark family history that includes abuse and threats, a protective order during his childhood. A dedicated yet disturbed, wanting to be a firefighter, but spiraled into planning this deadly trap. And the motive is still unknown. There is no manifesto. There is no evidence of extremist affiliation, and authorities are still trying to dig a little bit deeper. Now, the family has also made a statement, okay? They broke their silence, saying that, through their attorney, saying that they are offering condolences to the victims' families and to the broader Coeur d'Alene community. At this time, saying, quote, "At this time, we, the family of," insert shooter's name, "would like to offer our most heartfelt condolences to the families of those whose lives were taken and to the community of Coeur d'Alene at large. There are no words that can suffice for this tragedy and the infinite losses suffered by those affected by this shooting. They emphasize their intent to cooperate fully with law enforcement while also acknowledging that they too are struggling to make sense of the horror. Our hearts and spirits are broken for the lost and hurting and for our own loss as well. We do not understand why this happened or how this came about." And it's a sentiment that echoes with what the shooter's grandfather and stepfather have both said publicly, that while the shooter had his struggles, no one in the family imagined that he was capable of this, that he had dreams, he loved firefighters, and that something must have snapped. But in the end, what matters most is this. 2 heroic men are dead. Another recovering from multiple surgeries, and a community is grieving not only the loss of life, but the betrayal of a man who turned his fantasy of joining the fire service into carefully planning an ambush against it. It is beyond tragic. Beyond tragic. So that's what we have for today, guys. The Diddy updates, the Koberger updates, and this is, and as we have more information, of course, I'll be back on to let you guys know. If you came in late watching this, this is on YouTube because it started with Diddy, and that's still one of the main focuses. This is still under the Sean Diddy Combs playlist. You can go watch this if you came in late or missed anything when we were coming in. That being said, we're still on deliberation watch. We still have a Koberger hearing tomorrow. So, of course, we'll be watching all of these things. And as soon as we have more information, all those will be back. And if we get more information on the shooter in this Idaho situation, of course, I'll be back to let you guys know all that information as well. That being said, if somebody says, what were the Diddy updates? You can go to YouTube, go to the Sean Diddy Combs playlist. It was the first thing that we talked about in this. You can go back and watch them. That's why we record these. Make it easy. That said, I will see y'all probably here tomorrow, likely, if we have enough information to do so. And yeah, drop your thoughts about all this in the comments. Make sure to hit that follow if you don't already. Bye, guys.